So welcome back to the Reach Out podcast. We haven't done one for about 2 months now. We've had a little bit of time off for Christmas, so we're back for 2020. We're starting off with a really good podcast. I hope this is going to be a really good podcast. Just before we start, I'm just going to let you know that a little bit about Reach. So we're not a crisis team. Reach are there to help and support where possible. We're not medically trained, so we can't give you any medical advice. We'd always tell you to go to your doctors, your GPs first. We're there to talk to you, to meet, to have a coffee, to have a look at your lifestyle with you, see how we can help you, give you some tips. If you are ever in need, please give the crisis team a call on 642-860. They're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So please don't hesitate to give them a call. So let's get started. We're here today with Phil Quirk from PQ Performance. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Delighted to have you. I've been trying to get hold of you for a long time, but you keep running back to England or Dubai or Barcelona.
Yeah. I get around. I do get around, but it's great to be here. Absolutely fantastic.
Good. I think this one's going to really help people understand what NLP can do for them, because I know I've sat in with you a couple of times when you've been teaching classes, and I was quite blown away by it. Just the positive effect that it can have on you. So let's start by talking about you a little bit, about your background. Where did you start in life?
So I grew up in Peel to begin with. I kind of grew up in that era that was probably the last generation that could have a disruptive, dysfunctional childhood and then not have it held against you for the rest of your life because of social media and stuff like that. So you could get away with stuff in the 90s and then it would be forgotten about forever. And I think when I was growing up, I was kind of that stereotypical active, sporty. As soon as I found alcohol and girls, that was me with that as well. But still playing football, still doing lots of sport. But I was never very academic, and I was never really gonna work in an office. So I didn't know what I was going to do for a long time until I decided to join the forces. I'd been to like chef's college up at the Isle of Man College, but I lasted like 3 months up there. As soon as I found out I had to work weekends as a chef, I was like tagged out completely. So I went away and joined the Marines in '98 and had an amazing but uneventful career in the Marines. I had 6 years where I travelled. It was kind of in a little of a lull spot, really. I left just before it really got quite tasty, and often people ask me, do you wish you were in when because I didn't really go to Afghanistan or Iraq with the Marines. I did loads of travelling, but the period that I was in was almost in between Northern Ireland and in between really Iraq, really going mad from 2003 2004 onwards. And I really don't miss that opportunity. The reason being because I lost plenty of friends that never came back or came back significantly changed from the experience. But I did do lots of great stuff with the Marines, and I did get to jump out of helicopters, slide down ropes and fire guns and have all that sort of fun stuff without necessarily too many people firing back at me. And then I left, came back to the Isle of Man, had a few years back here on the island. Once again, I always think if you're on the Isle of Man and you're kind of not in an office, in payroll or the gaming sector and things like that, then it's not always the best place to be. And I spent 3 years floating around, and then joined the RAF, which really was probably the start of where I am today. Was joining the RAF. I often say that the Marines kind of forged my character. With the way they are and the training that you have to go through to get your Green Beret and everything you have to do. But the RAF developed my intellect, and the RAF spent a huge amount of money allowing me to go and learn about NLP, learn about hypnosis, learn about psychology, learn about transactional analysis, learn about all of these different things that would help me be a better coach in the RAF. And from all of that education, I was able to start my own business and come out the other side, and I haven't really looked back since 2015 since doing that.
So what's the difference between, you say the Royal Marines?
Yeah.
Are they like equipped in all aspects? So they're like all of the forces in one. What is a Royal Marine?
Well, first and foremost, amphibious soldier. So the idea of the Marines is they're they're attached to the Navy, and then what they do is then they would launch all of the kind of beach assaults, and they would be very much what we'd call, I think it was STOM, ship to objective maneuver. So you've got all your ships, across the horizon 10 miles out, and then the Royal Marines would come onto the beach with their LCVPs and their LCUs, which are kind of like all the different landing craft that they have. The Marines are like a mini army in and of themselves, in the context that they're completely self-sufficient. So if you join the army and you become a chef, you might join the catering branch, or if you're going to be a driver, you go into that part of the army, and then you get attached to battalions or whatever. Everyone joins the Marines and does the same basic training, the same 30 weeks basic training, and then at the end of there, you get all sorts of professions. So you could be a clerk, God forbid. You could be a chef. You could be a platoon's weapon. You could be what I did, which was LC, landing craft. So on the actually on the landing craft, you could do special forces, swimmer canoeist, and SBS. So it's kind of like a mini army in and of itself, completely self-sufficient.
Wow, so it's completely different to the RAF then?
Oh, yeah, night and day. It's like comparing the fire brigade and the ambulance service. They both might have blue lights and wear a uniform, but it pretty much ends at that sort of comparison.
So obviously I'm just going off SAS Who Dares Wins. That's about all I know about the forces.
Well, I think that's what most people do now, don't they? Because SAS Who Dares Wins, the perception of the military is probably completely skewiffed by programs like that.
I can imagine so.
Being a soldier is about how much. When you go on exercise as a in the Marines or in the army or any of the soldier and any of the infantry style of servicemen, it's about dealing with discomfort. It's about dealing with cold. It's about dealing with sleep deprivation, and it's about being, having that endurance of body and mind that you can go for days or weeks, in really quite brutal environments. Hollywood and programs I don't think always show that side of it. It's they kind of they romanticize it a little bit. It looks really like you'd want to do it, but when you put a 100-pound Bergen on your back, and then you feel the weight of that pull, the onto your shoulders and pull down on your traps and almost like rip your shoulders downwards, and then think that you've got this on the back for the next 12 hours, and it's cold and it's windy and it's dark and you haven't slept that for days. That's a very different reality than perhaps the adverts that you see on TV for the Marines when they're kind of coming out of the pond.
Yeah, that's the one.
It's not like that.
That's why I imagine when you say Royal Marines, them coming out of the lake with their guns. I think that's so cool to do. But then obviously you've got the background of how they got to that lake, and then
and how cold that lake is. It doesn't look cold on TV, does it? But
no, it actually looks quite fresh. They're just getting out like it's nothing.
Woodbury Common in January, when you're coming out of Peter's Pool, or it's not Peter's Pool. It's I can't remember the sheep dip. It's obviously 20 odd years ago when I was there, and it's just freezing, and it's so cold. It's just horrendous. And then you do something called wet and dry as a soldier. Most people that have never done soldier and have never heard of wet and dry, anyone that's been in the army, the paras, the Marines, anything like that, the moment you say wet and dry, they know exactly what it is. You got two sets of clothes basically. One set which is always wet, which you wear outside of your sleeping bag whenever you're awake, and then one set which is always dry, and you've got to keep it dry. It gets waterproofed. And you put that on to get in your sleeping bag. And the reason being, if you don't, and you get in your sleeping bag with your wet clothes, and then you put your sleeping bag around you, you'll get hypothermia pretty much straight away. So you've got to keep one set dry all the time. And the only place it can stay dry is underneath your poncho inside your sleeping bag, because it's all waterproofed. So imagine getting up at 3 a.m, and you've only been asleep for like an hour and a half maximum, and someone wakes you up because it's your turn to go on sentry. and you've got to get out of this warm, dry sleeping bag with your dry kit on, go into your Bergen, pull out your wet stuff which might have frosted over because it's that cold, take your dry kit off, be shivering and gibbering away, trying to take this off, and then the noise of a grown man putting on frosted over combat trousers is hilarious. It's hilarious. The noise that you make is just
couldn't even imagine having to put wet clothes on.
Yeah. That is the reality of soldiering. That is what happens, really.
Well, then let's hope they're not listening to this, because they're not going to want to go and get a job now, are they?
I know I'm a terrible.
You just
The Marine. If anyone from the Marines, like their advertising campaign, would be listening to this with their head in hands. But that is what it's truly like. It is.
It's unimaginable. I couldn't imagine it. I've been fascinated by the different aspects of it, and obviously I've got grandparents that served, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've never looked at it as a career as such. I just thought, what mindset do you have to be in to become a soldier? Like it's different mindset to what normal people have, surely.
I don't know. I mean, I think
someone's going to shoot at you.
You don't join thinking that, though. I didn't join the Marines thinking that someone's going to shoot at me.
Did you not?
You join because the chance to travel. You join, to be a Royal Marine. You think, well, it's to wear that green beret. To do that intense training, which is. There's no doubt about it. Lympstone is a brutal place, and it is not easy, and nor should it be. It should be as hard as woodpecker lips to pass the course, because that's at the end of it, what you want to be producing is soldiers that can go and perform in any condition, in any environment, under any situation around the world. So it is very hard, and you join for that. The brotherhood, the camaraderie between soldiers is unrivaled. I mean, having been in two different services in two different periods of my life, and also spent a lot of time outside of the military, there is no brotherhood like the military. The bonds that you develop, whether it's Royal Marines, Parachute Regiment, Army, RAF, Navy, it's all the same. The bonds that you develop with the people that you work around are unbreakable for life. So I think that's what people join for. They don't necessarily join with the thought that someone's going to shoot at me at some point.
Well, that's the first thing that comes into my head. Someone says you're going to go to the military, I think, well, I don't mind shooting a gun. Like, give me a gun, I'd shoot one.
But don't shoot back.
Just don't shoot back.
Like, maybe that's why I joined and you didn't, because I wasn't thinking about people shooting at me. So I was like,
and I hope the military now don't think that either.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can't get my head around it, and like I say, I'm just going off SAS.
We do, and
different, isn't it?
We live in a different time now as well.
Yeah.
When I joined the Marines in '98. Ireland was quieting down significantly. It was obviously 3 years before 9/11. All of the stuff that the world that we live in now didn't exist then.
Yeah.
So then joining the military was about traveling the world. There wasn't so many conflicts that were kind of happening all over, and obviously 9/11 was a game changer. Iraq, Afghanistan, the operational tempo went through the roof. So people joining the Marines in 2008 or 2006, as opposed to when I joined 10 years before, they would have known that they were joining, having seen, God forbid, coffins come home through Wootton Bassett and stuff like that. So they would have known that that's potentially where they were going. For my generation, I don't think that was the case. As I say, it was a quiet time. Unusually now when we look at the world today.
Yeah, that's probably where my mindset is different to yours, because I'm from this modern day where you sort of know you're going to go to war somewhere.
Yeah.
Because it's happening all over the place.
Yep.
Whereas, like you say, it probably wasn't happening back then.
Yep.
So I can understand why you joined, I suppose, and it obviously brings you to what you do now, and you learn all of this through the RAF. Well,
I think it started in the Marines, because I think the Marines is much more about mindset than what you can do physically. Like most people know this, that your mind will give up way before your body. And I think that what I learned at Lympstone was I learned that firsthand. So I didn't know at the time that I was going to do what I do now. But as I reflect back from the position I'm in now, I can think back to what I seen at Lympstone. People giving up that were physically very strong, but perhaps for whatever reason, mentally they'd succumb to the pressure of Lympstone. So the RAF educated that, and it put labels on it, and it gave me the ability to understand what I'd seen already. But that process had begun at Lympstone, no doubt about it. There was so many. When I went to Lympstone, I had a huge amount of imposter syndrome. I mean, I was a skinny boy from Peel in the Isle of Man, this tiny little fishing village, and suddenly I'm at Lympstone, where they train the Royal Marine Commandos, and there were lads there from London, from Manchester, from Glasgow, and they all looked more confident than me. They were all, they were all more assured. They just seemed in a completely different world than perhaps the world I'd grown up with, where, Peel is this, even in the context of the Isle of Man, is small compared to like Ramsey and Douglas.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of looking at these other guys that seemed more confident and seemed physically stronger, and they were giving up. And I was looking at them and I was thinking, well, I was finding it easy. I was really struggling. It was very hard, but I couldn't understand why these other guys that were much more confident and much more physically capable than me, were banging in and giving up, and they were kind of reaching a certain point in training where they couldn't get past it, and then that'd be it. Then they'd tap out, and slowly but surely, this like attritional loss of guys all around, and it never occurred to me at any point that I was going to get to the end. And I always say this to people: I never really thought that I'd pass. I kind of went down there thinking if I get to week 10, I'll be happy, and then I got to week 10, and if I got to 15, I'll be happy. And if I was to be honest with people and look them eye to eye, I never really thought I was going to pass it all. It was almost like I was expecting at any point someone to turn around and go,
"You're done.
What are you doing here?
Yeah,
Are you from Peel in the Isle of Man? Go on, get back, go back on the boat."
Would you have come back when you left in that mindset? Would you have come back and thought, right, people can be proud of me now because I went and attempted it?
If I'm honest with you, Hudge, joining and passing the Marines was the best and worst thing that happened. Because I had so much imposter syndrome, I overcompensated when I came out the other side. I'd be back home in Peel, and I'd be a nightmare. I'd be fighting, giving it Barry Big Bananas, overcompensating for perhaps my lack of confidence by being, bolshy and like in people's face. And the pendulum swung too far the other way. It didn't sit in the balance bit at the middle, of just being comfortable in your own skin. So whilst I was in Lympston, or whilst I was in my unit, I'd be really underconfident because I'd be surrounded by all these big, massive Marines. Yeah. When I come back to the Isle of Man, I'd give it Barry Big Bananas when I was 4 pints of Carl in the white, and I'd be like, "What are you looking at me?"
Yeah.
And I look back now, and it's ridiculous, but it was definitely something that, everything that you do in life shapes the way you become, and it shapes the character that you become. And I look back now and I think, I wish I could not have done those things, but then at the same time, that's part of the process of life of learning, and I think part of the reason why I did pass was the thought that I couldn't come back to Peel, because if I came back and I hadn't passed, what would what would you do? Go slot straight back into where you'd done before you'd gone away? So I was almost like holding myself in the race to get to the end of training as a commando, for the fear of coming back to the life that I'd left behind, and then just going straight back to where I was.
I understand that.
So it was, I suppose, a little bit like Cav, wasn't it? Cav with cycling came out, worked in the bank. He's like, I've got to make it as a professional cyclist because I cannot work in the bank.
Yeah, you see it in a lot of people.
Yeah,
but putting yourself in that environment to take yourself away from this environment, that's a massive change. It's not like moving to England and just getting yourself a job. You're throwing yourself into one of the toughest, forces in the world.
Yeah. If I knew what was coming, I probably wouldn't have been able to do it. It was ignorance.
Okay, okay, yeah.
And I mean, I'll tell you a great story. This is the truth. When I went away, I'd never been abroad till I joined the Marines. My first ever time away was when I went to America, training American Marines. So I'd never been abroad. I never had a passport. The only time I'd been on one holiday to Pontins when I was a kid, and I'd been away with the school once or twice, and then I'd been away with Western AC to run at, like Sale Harriers.
Oh yeah.
All on the boat. I'd never been on a plane till I went to join the Marines. Wow. So the first time I'd ever been on a plane on my own, I was going off to do the pre-selection, and I'd never been on a train either. And I got my letter from the Marines, which was basically all my travel arrangements and my plane ticket and whatnot. And obviously, I got to London. I flew to London. I got the train down to Exeter, and then Exeter down to Lympston. And I didn't realise I had to take this piece of paper that the Marines had sent me and exchange it for my actual train tickets. I thought I just took this piece of paper with me. So I'm on this packed train going to Exeter, and in the middle of summer, boiling hot, packed train, nowhere to sit. I'd never been on a train in my life except for the one that goes from Douglas. And the conductor comes around and says, "Tickets, please." And I gave him my piece of paper, and I never forget the look. He just looked at me as like this special boy from the Isle of Man that didn't know how to work a train. And I kind of like was, you know, when you're sweating profusely, and I was like, I don't know, I thought that you just give this. And he's like, no, you need to change this for your ticket. This is not valid. This isn't a ticket. This is a travel warrant from the military. And I was like, what do I do? And he goes, don't worry about it.
Just let you off of it.
Yeah. I just told him I was from Peel in the Isle of Man. He's like, yeah, I get it.
Oh, because he knows.
no, I'm joking. But yeah, so it's
different.
Yeah, it was different. But it led me to where I am now. So which is perfect.
Shaped. Yeah, you can see that as well, though. And it's like even sitting with you outside of this room, you can you're a very calming influence, and I think that's because of maybe the life that you've had, like you're saying, obviously going away and throwing yourself in the deep end, you know, being very shy, say, in that environment, and then coming back over here and being the big guy and like not knowing yourself. I think you find yourself, you seem like a very content guy at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, the life I have now, you know, that my business is, and I'm going to say this because what I do, but my business is the best business in the whole world. I get to help lots of people, and I get to make a living for myself doing something that I absolutely love. But probably more importantly than that, you know, some of the people that I've worked with and some of the people that I've coached and helped, seeing what, you know, the challenges that they've overcome and how they've now gone on to, you know, do all sorts of things. There isn't really anything that I can think of with a greater reward than that, except for maybe if you work in the medical profession and you really help someone that's hurt themselves. I can see there's would be huge reward in that. But transactionally, what I get is I get to live a really good life. I get to travel around pretty much all over the world, which is amazing, doing a job that I absolutely love doing and helping people while getting paid. So there isn't really any downside. It doesn't really ever feel like work. Yeah,
no, I completely understand, because I get that sort of feeling as well.
Yeah,
I mean, sitting opposite someone that's, you know, in a place like, say, in a hole, and just working out their lifestyle and helping them move forward, and then seeing them a few weeks later when they've implemented it, and they come and sit down and they have a smile on their face, that you can't buy that. I really don't, and I can imagine from your side of it, you know, it's huge for yourself as well. Yeah, and it's that, you'll have seen it yourself, that eureka moment where someone just, their eyes light up and they realise, I just need to do this and this, and then they go and do it, and then they come back and then they say, do you know what, you know, I'm on it, you know, I feel great, and to be part of that process is priceless, and it's very, I'm sure you've experienced it yourself, it's very addictive as well, you know, because you do really want to help everyone, and sometimes I often actually think more about the people I haven't been able to help more than the people that I have, and the balance of scales is unbelievable. It's like 10-1 of people I can help to those I can't, but then you kind of focus on the ones that you can't, because you do want to help. The nature of this is you want to help everyone. Yeah, of course. But sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. I think it's going to be more, hopefully when this comes out and obviously people learn a lot more about you. Yeah. I hope that you help. I think you can help a lot more people when they start to understand what NLP is. Yeah. And obviously, like we're sat here, I understand NLP slightly because I've sat with you a few times in your classes, but most people on listening to this are not going to know what NLP is. So I don't know, you take it away and explain what NLP actually is and what it does. And NLP, all NLP is copying other bodies of knowledge. It was created. It wasn't even created because it can't be created. It was codified, I suppose, is the way to describe it, by a professor of linguistics called John Grinder, and a mathematician and a computer programmer called Richard Bandler. And these guys were not from psychology per se. They weren't studying psychology as such, but they were in that world of psychology, and it was kind of like coming out of the 1960s into the 70s. You had something called the human potential movement. You had the explosion of hippies, of really, really, really intelligent, bright, young
people at university, that perhaps were experimenting with psychedelic drugs and going off in all sorts of different directions, and probably taking things to the outer limits of their boundaries. And what Bandler and Grinder did is they looked at psychology, and they kind of said, well, why is it that that some people get amazing results, some people get intermediate results, and some people don't seem to get any results? And they did a process of modelling where they studied really, really amazing therapists. Predominantly three people were the three main protagonists that they modelled to formulate everything that came in NLP. Milton Erickson from Hypnosis, Virginia Satir, who was a group family therapist and a social worker, and Fritz Perls, who was he came up with Gestalt therapy and was a German therapist. These three people, for whatever reason, just seem to get unbelievable results. They seem to be, the very top of their individual games. And what they did is they studied what they did, and they made it into process. So they took kind of the more ambiguous, untouchable talents. That person's just really talented. They get really great results, and they said, well, that's how do we replicate talent? It's really hard because it's such a abstract concept. Well, why don't we just study what they do, break it down into stages? These stages we can, make into a process. And then when we've got the process, we just replicate the process. And then if we do the same thing as what they're doing, then we'll obviously get the same result. So all of the academic stuff from NLP is held in the parent bodies of where it came from and where it's studied. So Erickson with hypnosis, Gestalt therapy, and group family therapy as examples. Now, what NLP did different to perhaps anything else that had been done before, it enabled non-academic people, so dare I say it, laymen's, like myself, I'd class as that, the ability to go and learn about the mind, learn about why people do what they do, learn a little bit about the nervous system, learn a little bit about language and how it plays such an important role, and learn, some really interesting techniques that can help. It doesn't make people that study NLP psychologists or psychotherapists. I'm really fortunate with my business that I have academic guys that are attached. I have two doctors that work for us in London that one's a psychologist, one's a psychotherapist, and they kind of underpin a lot of what we use with our coaching. If I'm unsure of something, I go to Dr. Philip, who's a psychotherapist, and say, this is what we're looking at doing, this is how we're going to use it in coaching, and then he kind of provides the academic underpinning. But I think what NLP did for the first time is it enabled people just to go on a 1-week course and learn a little bit. I always caution people that I teach. It doesn't mean you become a psychologist or anything like that. It just means you have an understanding of how the mind works a little bit. Where I think NLP is most effective is in coaching. That's my personal opinion, and that's what I teach when I teach it. It's an amazing thing to add on to any coach, whether you be a technical coach or a performance coach. An NLP course will enrich and enable you to be able to do what you do much more effectively, in my opinion and in my experience, having done it for 12 years now. And it's fascinating body of knowledge. It really is interesting, is probably an understatement of what you find with it. Just the same as hypnosis is, once again, fascinating.
So what tools will NLP give me as a coach?
It'll help you understand the importance of language.
In what way do you mean language? Like the way somebody talks?
Well, there's two types. There's two planes of language to understand. There's what you use inside your mind, so your internal dialogue, and then there's also the way you use language externally when you're in communication with other people. One of the things that I often say to people is language doesn't describe the world you live in. It determines the world you live in. So the way you use language orientates the way your brain absorbs its reality. So if I use an example, you probably know someone that would describe themselves as being very unlucky. Nothing good ever happens to me.
Yeah.
And guess what? Nothing good ever happens to them.
Yeah.
And then you probably know someone as well that, is absolutely, the most lucky person in the world, almost like bathed in 4-leaf clovers, enters a lottery and wins the lottery on one occasion. The actual reality is that neither of those two people probably experience good or bad luck any more than each other. The only difference is that one of those people they only remember the times they're unlucky and they forget the times they're lucky. The other person only remembers the times they're lucky and forgets the times they're not lucky. So their language, the way they describe their world, the way they describe how their existence is, it doesn't describe it, it determines it, because the person that thinks they're lucky will remember the times they're lucky, and then they'll tell people they're lucky, and then whenever they're lucky they'll remember that, and it'll be a perpetuating belief system, and it can go either way. So when I coach people and when I teach people, I really do caution them on how they use language. If you wake up in the morning and you say this is going to be a terrible day enough, your brain is going to notice all the things that supports that belief, that concept that this day is going to be terrible. When I used to work at Battleback at Lilleshall, which is an incredible place. So Battleback is funded by the Royal British Legion. It's a £4 million centre at Lilleshall, and all the coaches, like for instance myself, what we are is we're coaches that are seconded by Carnegie Great Outdoors, which is a part of Leeds Beckett University. So basically I used to work for Leeds Beckett University as a coach, seconded out to Battleback. We'd have psychologists attached to us, and they'd evaluate all of the coaching. And what we used to do is work with what we call WIS in the military, so Wounded, Injured and Sick Servicemen. When I first started at Battleback, a lot of it was physical injury. As I'm sure you can imagine, it was people coming back with missing limbs. You know, some of the injuries that I'd seen while I was coaching there were absolutely horrendous to see anyone that could go through that injury. But what happened over the period I was there was that the physical injury started to subside, and it became much more the mental side of what the operational tempo we'd had in Afghanistan and Iraq. So it was much more about PTSD was obviously very prevalent. Anxiety was very prevalent. Agoraphobia. There was a huge amount of things, and often they were all the mental trauma of what's happened, the sort of consequence of the really high tempo. Now, one of the models we used to teach the guys was about something in your brain called your RAS, your reticular activating system, part of the reticular formation. So the way I explain RAS is effectively like Google search engine in your brain. So if you search for things in Google, it creates a browser history, and then what happens with that browser history, you start to get pop-up notifications all around your laptop. So if you start looking at new curtains on Google, then as everyone knows, on your Facebook you start to get advertised for new curtains, and you're thinking, oh my god,
scary, isn't it?
Does Facebook know what I'm thinking? But really it's because your browser history is full of these searches, and to a certain extent it's not completely true, but it's a good analogy. Your brain works very similarly in the context that whatever you search for creates a browser history. This is why if you decide to buy a new car, and then you go and look at lots of different models, and then you decide that you're going to buy a new Volkswagen Golf, a black Golf, and then you do your research on it, you go and test drive one, and then what happens is you're driving around is what?
You see one.
You start seeing these Golfs everywhere.
Man, that's so true.
So what's happening with your RAS, because your RAS is full of searches for these Golfs, because your browser history is full of this, then what happens is your brain discounts the other cars, so it ignores them. But whenever it's a black Golf, it's drawn to it and it says, look, there's a Golf. And then that supports your belief system. So if you think about that, if you had really, quite negative thoughts, and you were thinking really negative things, like some of these guys that come to Battleback, their browser history is full of terrible searches. Then what's going to happen is their brain's going to find the evidence to support those searches. It'll notice things that support that, and then that will perpetuate and strengthen the belief that their searches are correct. When actually all that's happening is the way that they're thinking, all of the browser history in their brain is alerting their senses to notice things. It's just like black Golfs. So what we used to do with the guys at Battleback is we used to teach them about this RAS and how important it is to pay attention to what you're thinking and what you're reflecting in your mind, and start practicing gratitude. The reason why gratitude is so good for starting to develop your mindset is because if you're looking at 2 or 3 things to be grateful for each day, what's going to happen in your brain once you know that you're going to have to the next morning do a little gratitude log where you need to be grateful for 3 new things. Because obviously to begin with it'd be easy, you do your family, you do your possessions, but after a few days you're like, oh my god, I'm running out of things, especially British people, I'm running out of things to be grateful for. But if you start looking for things to be grateful, what's going to happen with your browser history is going to be full of those searches. And then what's going to happen with your RAS is going to be alert to things to be grateful for. So if something little happens in your day that perhaps you would have not paid attention to, your brain goes, oh, that's great. I can remember that for my log to be grateful for. And slowly but surely, your RAS starts to reprogram itself with all these positive thinking. And then slowly but surely over time, your brain just naturally scans for black golfs or positive things to be grateful for. It's just about understanding the black golf analogy.
Wow, it literally just blew my mind a little bit, because it's so true. I do it all the time. I think about something and then I will spot them everywhere, or like I see a person and I'll think about that person, and then the next day I see the same person. I'm like, I haven't seen you in years. How am I seeing you again? Yeah. But it is picking that one person out of the crowd.
Yeah. It's the same as your name. That's why when you hear your name in a conversation in a pub, and then you don't hear any other word in the conversation that's happening, your RAS is programmed via all your senses, and because your name is so heavily ingrained into your RAS, as soon as you hear your name over on the other side of the, your ears prick up and you kind of, my ear's on fire. And all it is just all the other words are just deleted. They're not, your brain's not paying attention to that, but it picks out that. So it's about understanding how your brain can be, to a certain extent, programmed to focus on positive stuff. And that doesn't mean you have a great day every day. And I think it's really important that people always understand that no one strategy, technique or approach will ever prevent you from having a bad day at the office, having a big argument with a friend, but it's about preparing your mind so it's in the best possible shape. So whenever you have these bad days, they just become a bad day that can be immediately
wiped away,
put to one side, as opposed to them being catastrophic. When your mind sets in that kind of negative spiral, you have that one bad day which then becomes a catastrophic, and then it sets off a spiral of days and days and days where things aren't great.
Man, I see it so often with people that are in that negative hole that really can't think positively.
Yeah.
And it, obviously I don't know much about NLP, so I try and just be as positive as possible towards them. But now you talk about your RAS, is that like scientific? Your RAS, you can see it like
it's a scientific part of your brain, the reticular activating system. So it's kind of like, as all the information comes into your brain via your 5 senses, it kind of goes into the RAS, and then from the RAS, then it's disseminated out to the cortex, where the cortex then makes sense of everything and starts looking at your behavior and language. But obviously, there's so much information that's happening in every moment that your RAS can only really send out the information that's important. So it will send out information to the cortex that it thinks relevant based on all of your thinking and the way you think and the way your brain is configured. So it's an actual, it's like a pencil sort of shape. It's maybe the size of a finger, and it sort of connects to sort of the spine. So it's the older part of the brain, at the top of the spine, and then it's part of like the bigger, which is the reticular formation, and it's an information sorting. It's like a post office. All the information's coming in, and then it's sorted and then sent out to the different parts of the brain. But one of the what I'd say to people like listen to this podcast, you can go onto YouTube and watch great little YouTube videos about RAS, the cartoon ones where people explain how it works. People that say I'm always late, because they almost make self-fulfilling prophecies because the brain creates the reality that they're going to be late. And I think that certainly because I'm not an academic, and I never pretend to be, so I'm not a psychologist or a psychotherapist. I'm a coach, and I coach people. What I love about the things that I can teach people is it's about making things applicable that they can take into their real life. So you can kind of give someone a whole textbook of theory, but if it's not relevant to them, and if they can't make it relevant to their life, then that whole textbook's a waste of time.
Yeah.
So the reason why I often teach things in metaphors and analogies. I teach RASs like Google, because people can identify with Google and they can understand, oh, I know about search, I know about a browser history, I know about pop-ups that come up on my social media. Is it strictly scientifically correct? Not necessarily, but it's very, very close, and it does work in that way, but it makes it real to the person. So I think that the pursuit of everyone that teaches is to be able to give people information which is real to them in their life. Yeah. And if you can do that, then that's when people really can take stuff away and then make it real to them and make it things. A great example is gratitude. People often talk about gratitude, but I always think that if you can give people the science behind why it works, everyone kind of knows that gratitude is a good thing to do. It's a good thing to practice gratitude, if not just for the reason that the state of being grateful is a very positive state. If you think about all the times you've been really grateful in your life, it's a very positive state for a person to be in. So just by practicing paying attention to what you're grateful for and then getting into that state, getting into that feeling of gratitude, is a hugely positive thing. But as most people know, the problem with the world is not information, it's implementation. And actually, when you teach people why it's good as opposed to it's just good, the implementation of the information happens much more readily then, because they know what they're going to get from it. They know the benefit of doing it, as opposed to just knowing it's going to be good and nothing else. It's like when people say have a positive mental attitude, you're like, well, that's great, can you tell me some more? Can you give me a bit of, what do I need to do? Just have a PMA, positive mental attitude, think positively.
God, it annoys me that.
It's
so hard to snap out if you are in that bad place.
Yes.
It's so hard to just snap your fingers and say, I'm going to be positive today.
Yeah, well, it's like saying to a fish that's out of water, just, visualize the sea and you'll be okay. The fish is still not breathing though.
No, yeah, exactly. So that's how you teach.
Predominantly, I
coach.
I'd like to take science. So while I like to do my research, and like I said, we've got the academic team that work with us. But what I want to do is I want to take the academic side, but it's got to be made real to a person. Mm-hmm. It's got to be presented to them in a way that they can go, I totally get that works for me. The same as what you did before, when you're like, I can totally see that I do that, and that now that I know why that works, I can now understand the process. So it's about condensing down academic reality into a way that a person can make it their personal reality. Most people have took an academic book, whether it be psychology, whether it be business, you can name any academic study, and you read 2 pages of the book and you know all of the words, but you're like, I don't really know what's been said there, and then you go back and you start again, you go, I still don't know. No. So if that's what a person's hearing when you're teaching them, then it's a waste of time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It doesn't work. So you've got to translate that into a way that a person can go, I get it, I get that.
So it was always, it's not something that you don't already know. Yes. But you're putting it in a way that makes you understand what it can do for you.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, that's huge, and I didn't even understand that part of it. Obviously, the gratitude side, I've read books that say, try and think of positive things like mantras and things like that in the morning. But I never understood why I was doing it.
Yep.
So I just stopped doing it, and I just thought, it's not really doing anything for me. Yeah, fair enough. It was making me feel good for 5 minutes, and But why am I doing this for the long run?
Yep.
But now you've just explained Google search and everything. Like, if I keep putting negative things in my mind, then them negative things are going to be always there, and that's all I'm going to think about.
Yep.
It makes complete sense.
And then if you think about if we stay on the analogy of your Google search engine and your browser history, if you've got 3 positive things in there, which are your, like what you've done in the morning, but then the rest of the day is full of negative searches, of course everything that you're going to get shown is going to be the stuff you don't want, because the browser history is going to be overwhelmingly biased in one direction. So it's about understanding. Nothing in nature is a digital 1 or a 0. So you can't just flick from one to the other. You can't go from being like you've had your struggles with anxiety, you can't just go, right, I'm going from anxiety to not anxiety.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as like a switch that switches it on and off. Everything's analog. Everything's about doing lots of positive things, lots and lots of things that over time that turn that dial, that analog dial, the other way. They send it, into a positive direction as opposed to perhaps a not positive direction. So there's no magic bullets, and lots of the things that I think that help a mindset, it's really important. I always think it's really important for people to understand is that a lot of them are really common sense things that people don't realize. That the simple strategies can have a huge effect on the way your mind works. Food, what food you're eating, how much alcohol you're drinking, how much stress you're under, and how much sleep you're getting. 4 questions you can ask yourself. And if you're really struggling, you can probably guarantee that all 4 of those areas are not positive.
Mm-hmm.
Not getting good enough sleep, perhaps drinking too much alcohol, stressed at work, and whenever you're stressed, you make poor dietary choices.
Yeah.
So that becomes like a spiral that just keeps going down and down and down. The more tired you are, the more coffee you drink, and the more alcohol you have at night to get to sleep. Then you're stressed in work, and then you're fuzzy. You make terrible food choices because you're so tired and you can't prep, really good food. Very simple strategies that can have a profound effect is just looking at the diet, looking at sleep, looking at your stress levels, and just making small incremental changes.
And focusing on what you're actually thinking about.
Yes.
When you say gratitude, does that go for giving gratitude as well? Does that have the same effect?
In what context? What are you thinking?
So if I was to text you tomorrow morning and say, thanks a lot, Phil, for doing the podcast. That was really great work. I really appreciate that you've done it to start your day.
Yeah, because I think what we're looking at is chemicals and hormones in the brains, neurotransmitters. And dopamine is kind of that wonderful pleasure reward hormone that we get. It's also what all the social media sites and the phone companies realize that your person gets when they get notifications.
Yeah.
You get your little spike of dopamine, which makes you feel good, and it's that pleasure reward hormone. You want to get another one.
Yeah.
And when you do things like that, so that kind of deliberate act of kindness, just saying to someone, "Oh, I really appreciate you coming and giving your time. It was fantastic. It's been an hour." You feel good for it, and the reason why you feel good for it is because you get a little bit of that dopamine hit. You get that little flush of dopamine. Now dopamine's an amazing neurotransmitter in the brain. It switches on the learning receptors. It puts your brain into a positive mode as opposed to like neutral or negative. And it has huge amounts of benefits. It's obviously the basis of addiction as well, so it's important to understand that. But I think doing things like that, it gives you that little dopamine flush. Like, for instance, one of the courses that we run, it's a colleague of mine called Dean Bellman, who's a former Hercules pilot from the RAF, and he wrote a course called The Adventurers Within, and it's a positive psychology course. Effectively, he's done a lot of work with Sean Aker. Sean Aker is really famous for it's one of the top 10 TED Talks, The Happiness Advantage. Harvard positive psychologist Sean Aker. Now, the first thing we do on the course is we get people to take out their phones, because obviously phones are traditionally what's stigmatized as a negative thing, the addiction of them, and we're creating a zombie apocalypse of people that are walking around with their heads down bumping into stuff. But what we do is we get them to take their phone out, go through their pictures, find a picture that really means something to them, something that was really good, and then share it with as many people in the room as possible. And to begin with, it's really difficult. People don't want to do it because we're kind of guarded. We've created that culture where I'm going to show my pictures. But then what happens in every course that I've delivered with Dean is once you kind of get over that initial hurdle of not wanting to share your picture, you can feel the energy levels in the room just go through the roof. You can hear people laughing, the volume goes up as people are starting to share. And when you sit down and you say to everyone, well, how do you feel? And everyone's like, I feel really good. And the reason for that is because if I've got a picture, perhaps it's me and my 2 daughters, and then I show you, and then I explain to you where we were, what we were doing, what happens is my brain starts to relive that moment. I start to access the memory of that to go with the picture, so I can bring it to life in my explanation. when I do that, I get this big flush of dopamine in my brain because I'm reliving a really positive memory via my phone. And actually, when I share it with you, we kind of have this conversation, and then you do the same with your picture. We both end up in this kind of dopamine positive state where we feel really good. And all we've done is took a photograph to emulate how easy it is to get your brain into a positive state.
Wow. You blow my mind here. Literally. I really hope this comes across to the listeners as well, because this is, it's taking me back a little bit, because there's things that I know in my mind that work. Like you just said about the picture, I can see myself doing it. I do it with the lads. Yep. Like, for instance, my mate and his daughter, when he shows me a picture of his daughter, the smile on his face makes me happy. Yep. And then he tells me about her, and 100%.
Yep. And we've got those amazing mirror neurons in our brain, haven't we? So when you're smiling away, I'm reciprocating the smile because I'm matching you with my mirror neurons. And you know, it's when you're with someone that's in a really positive state, you know, and they're really happy, it very much just rubs straight off on you, doesn't it? And the same negative as well. You know, when there's a thing that we used to talk about a battle pack called compassion fatigue or transference, which I imagine you might have already come across without having a label for it. And that's that theory that when you sit with someone and they're perhaps not in a good way and they're struggling, and you sit and you do a load of coaching and you give them a huge amount of your energy, when you walk away, you know, you are absolutely chin strapped, because
100%.
Because you've got this compassion fatigue where you're giving all of your positive energy, trying to uplift them, and once they walk away, you're kind of and one of the things we used to find at Battleback was that on the first day, on Monday, the guys would be really defensive. Like they'd be head down, arms folded, legs folded, looking down at the ground. And you know, if you're out front, it can be quite lonely because you're talking to this group of 20 military guys, and you ask a question, and then it's like tumbleweed rolls across, and you've got to persevere with it. You know, you can't let that affect the way you're delivering, and you keep going, and then we get them out, we take them climbing, and they have a few experiences, which then it starts to get dopamine in their brain. They start to talk to each other. They start to open up. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they're completely bonded as a group. Yeah. Friday, they're high-fiving and hugging, and they set off on a real high, you know, from just that 4 or 5 days. But then the instructors, you drive home, and then, you know, you've got Heart FM on, and Whitney comes on, and suddenly you've got to wind the window down because you're leaking at the corners of your eyes listening to like a soppy song. And the reason for that is because you're just giving so much of your energy through the week, you're just completely shattered, and you get home and you can hardly have a conversation at the end of it. Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. And obviously I've spoke to you in the past, and you said you went for a period of, you know, you might have burned yourself out a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that due to that side of it as well, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was about 2 years ago, and I thought that, you know, you can't get burnout doing something you love. Yeah. I thought that you burnout, and the kind of ironic thing was I teach it as well, so it's kind of awkward, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
But I always thought that burnout was something that you got, you know, from being slaughtered at the corporate front of, you know, like doing 15-hour days, you know, in the corporate environment, in the office, you know, till 10 o'clock at night, and then back in the next day, and then too much of that attritionally, and you end up getting burnt out. Makes absolute sense. Or from a sporting perspective, just completely overtraining of an athlete, which is something that I've seen myself with some of the athletes that I've coached. So I always thought that burnout was, you know, in those sort of areas, either completely physically slaughtered, or, you know, doing something that a job that is just required of you to make absolute energy sacrifices. What was amazing was I got burnout from doing something I absolutely love, and that was teaching. And I was teaching at Lillishall. I had 2 courses back to back, which was ambitious anyway. So when I teach, I kind of like 12 hours a day, and it's you know, it's a lot of it is me on send. Obviously, there's group activities, and there's lots of break-offs, and there's break lunch and a break in the morning and the afternoon and whatnot. But I'm pretty much on send for 12 hours, and then obviously you get all the questions. And then because I'm quite sociable at Lillishall, the course will go for a couple of drinks at night, so I'll join them in the bar and have 3 or 4 beers, which then means I don't get the right sleep that I need. I know the science behind this, but it's not, you know, I'm still doing this. It's the do as I say, not as I do sort of thing. And then I did that for like 2.5 weeks, And at the end of it, I just broke. And I remember for the last 3 days of the course, I was just limping over the line. And then obviously on the last night of the course, you have last night madness. Everyone gets drunk. Once again, what I should have done is took myself off the bed, but I stay up, and, I've got that Manx gene, gene that means that you've got to be the last person at any social event.
Yeah, you can't leave.
Yeah. And then eventually I just got burnout, and it was a big wake-up call for me, really, because I realised actually, just because you care and love about what you do, it doesn't prevent you from, burning yourself out. And it took me a good while to recover. It took me about a week to get any sort of resemblance of any energy level that I could just do basic functional things like answer emails. For nearly a week, I was pretty much polaxed. I still have to manage it now because I do love what I do so much. I will, really slaughter myself because I'm so passionate about what I do, and occasionally I get bit back and I get reminded, and I have to take a step back. But I think it's something that's going to become more and more prevalent over the next 10 years as the work structure tempo continually increases in businesses. I think that humans will be like matches that just are burnt, and it's very difficult to really understand what it's like to be burnt out unless you've had burnout. It's a very unusual feeling when you're quite energetic like me to not be able to get out of bed, even though you've slept and you've slept and you slept and you slept, and I'm like, I still cannot get out of bed. And you have this like impending doom of just not being able to even open your laptop, because you think, well, even if I was polaxed in my bed, I could still open my laptop and answer email. I couldn't, for some reason, I couldn't even bring myself to look at emails. And all I'd done is I'd overcooked my nervous system. I just pushed it too hard, and if you push it too hard, it'll push back.
You're right. I think my panic attack started through my nervous system. I think it was to do with that. I think I did push myself. I might have burnt myself out a little bit. Might have been to do with the relationship that I was in, and obviously it was in really negative time. And then a little bit of negativity around me, and I think I just felt like I was really run down.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I had the flu, but I didn't have the flu.
Yeah.
And then obviously that's when the panic attack hit, and it was like, I think that was to do with my nervous system just saying to me, look, you played a lot of football, you've gymmed a lot recently, like you're not going through a great stage, like with the relationship. I think it just hit me and just said, you've had enough, mate.
Our nervous system was not designed to live the way we live. That's fundamentally the problem with the whole of our world, nearly. It was not designed to do what it does today. So if you think about evolution, that's taken our species millions of years, and then specifically our Homo sapiens the last 200,000 years. So we've evolved out of other Homo species, of which there's been about 4 million years of development from when we broke off from the apes. And all of that 4 million years, and then the 200,000 years up until around about 10,000 years ago, we were hunter-gatherers, and our nervous system was designed for a specific reason, to keep us alive. So if a predator came, if I noticed there was a predator, I've got 3 responses. I can freeze, I can run, or I can fight. They're the only 3 that I've got. And straight away, our best defense is always our freeze, which is why you do the one thing that makes no sense when you walk out in front of a car. You look at it and pull a stupid face. Because over time, we evolutionarily programmed that freeze was our best defense, because we're not very good at running, we're not very strong, so we can't fight off many predators, and we can't outrun many either. Yeah. So we go still. Now, what we have now is a very highly adaptive nervous system that was designed over millions, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years perhaps, to really be a very adaptive system to get us out of trouble. So we either freeze, we run, or we hide. And all of everything that happens when we go into our freeze, flight and fight is triggered by our sympathetic nervous system, and when it slows down, the parasympathetic nervous system. So if a lion, if we go back 10,000 years and we're on the African savannas, and And for whatever reason, me and you nearly get eaten by a lion, but we don't. We manage to escape it for whatever reason. Once we've escaped, we've had the best day ever. We're high five, and we've got a great story for the tribe. And we go back, but our nervous system, will be full of adrenaline, full of cortisol, full of all of the stuff, full of noradrenaline, all the stuff it needed to get away. And it would take a little bit of time to flush out, but then it'd flush itself out, and we'd go back. We don't have any lions anymore, which is self-evident in our society. We don't have any predators that are hunting us, but what we do have is low-level, constant stress, which pushes us into a sympathetic nervous system. So we've always got cortisol flushing around our body. We've always kind of alert when you add coffee to that and don't get the right sleep. And I personally think, and whether or not the science is settled on this, but this is just observational more than anything, that the reason why there's so much problem with anxiety and stress and things like that is because all our nervous systems were not designed to function the way they are today. And what we're doing is we're asking them to perform in a different way than what they were evolved to perform. They were evolved as a spike and then relax system. Spike when there was a predator there. If you got eaten, well, it didn't matter anyway because it was game over. Yeah. But if you didn't, it relaxed and you could go back. But we live in this world of constant stress. It's not at the high level of a lion chasing you where everything is, at its most heightened state. But it's at a level where it's just tipping us out of homeostasis and into our sympathetic nervous system. And if we stay in that sympathetic nervous system for too long, for months and months and months perhaps, and then bearing in mind that we don't have a different stress response for emotional stress. So for instance, a breakup with a girlfriend, we don't have a different response to that than we do for a lion chasing us. It's the same response. So whether we perceive a stress or whether we actually have stress, so whether we worry about something that's coming, it creates the same response as it actually coming for us to get us. And over weeks, months, perhaps even years, you just get that chronic fatigue of the nervous system. And eventually that manifests into panic attacks or depression, or your body just says enough's enough.
That's what I felt like. It felt like chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
It really didn't. It was only when I sort of lay down and I said to my body, right, just, there you go. I'm done. That's when it hit. When I lay down, that's when it spiked completely. And it very much felt like, when you're a kid getting chased by the police.
Yeah.
When you're running. Yeah. It felt like that. It was like, oh my God, I feel invincible.
Yeah.
But it was also it was that out of hand that you couldn't really control it.
Yeah.
It's a scary thing. Hands down, the scariest thing I've ever, experienced.
Yeah.
And obviously I've dealt with it by slow my nervous system down by doing breathing.
Yep.
That's a technique I've learned is to push out more than you take in.
Yep.
Which has really worked for me.
Yeah, breath work's amazing. I'm such a massive advocate of breath work.
Yeah.
Whether it be box breathing, holotropic breathing, whether it be obviously Wim Hof method, which
these big words.
Yeah.
Remember, we're not all coaches like you.
Well, I mean, a lot of them are very simple techniques, like box breathing. So most people that know me know that I'm a huge advocate of breath work. I've been doing since I got mild burnout. I think that's what I got, self-diagnosed mild burnout. I got into doing. I stumbled across the Wim Hof method. Seen it on YouTube. No one else was doing it at this point. It was unheard of a little bit. I found this crazy Dutch guy on YouTube. And do you know what? I thought, I'll give this a go, and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the breath work and also the cold water stuff. But the breath work especially, I just found so unbelievable. That I'd always had a go at mindfulness, and obviously Mike Cooley over here, great guy.
Yeah,
and I know that what my brain would often do when I tried to do mindfulness, it would run off 1,000 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the point, and I know I can almost hear Mike saying that, is that the point of mindfulness is to let it run and then bring it back gently, and then to constantly bring it back. When I first practiced the breath work, I'd found something that I didn't have to try to quiet my mind. It just happened during the breath work. And I don't know whether it was because I was putting my focus of attention into the breath work, but my brain would just be completely, almost flatlined. It just was a serene experience of non-activity of the mind that I'd never been able to find in anything else. And then when I got into getting into the cold water as well, and I realised that just almost perpetuated that. So the breath work and then being in the cold water, where the only thing you're thinking about is that water, and.
But it's like it's going back to nervous system. It's like when you're in that cold water, like the RSC, it's like you're just surviving.
Yes,
literally.
But the interesting thing about it though is it's. I often talk to people about the lens of their mind. So the lens, what I mean by that is that me and you can have two identical experiences, and depending on what our lens is, depending on the way we perceive this experience as it comes into our awareness. I might interpret it as being an amazing thing, and you might interpret it as being the worst and most stressful thing that you've ever done. So we have the same external event, but it has completely polarized effects on us as humans. And one of the things that I loved about the cold stuff was this idea of choosing your response to this very harsh environment. So when I go into the cold water, you can go one of two ways. You can either make loads of weird noises and pant, which is pretty much what happens on New Year's Day, across the whole Alaman. People run in and it sounds like this huge beach massacre where people are screaming and then they're in and out. Or you can go in and make peace with that environment and accept you're in cold water, and it has a transformational effect on your experience of it. It completely changes it. Suddenly you're not freaking out by how cold it is. You're actually making, I don't want to sound too spiritual, but you're making peace with your environment. We're going back to that animalistic strength that we all have. I think the biggest addiction that haunts humans is comfort. We're addicted to comfort. We warm rooms up when we're too cold. We cool them down when we're too hot. We put a coat on, we run to the car, as soon as we're in the car, we heat our seats, and we're addicted to comfort. And going in the Irish Sea in the winter is not comfortable. It's a farthest way. But I tell you what, it doesn't half build your resolve, your strength, your mindset. I can't really see any drawbacks or negatives with it. And obviously now on the Isle of Man there's Ian, who's a Wim Hof instructor.
Yeah.
And I'd say to anyone listening to this podcast, go along to one of his workshops, and it's very alien for people to put themselves in cold water. Most people, I think, are very intimidated by the idea, and
I am,
and quite rightly so. But if you can get over that, and if you can have that kind of resolve of mindset to go past that, on the other side of that discomfort is absolute another world of mental strength.
Okay,
I should get commission for Ian, shouldn't I?
Yeah. Do you know what I've done a little bit with Ian. I've done the breath work with Ian.
Yeah.
I did it with him and Mandy Kane. Mandy Kane did a bit of sound therapy with it as well.
Okay, yeah.
First time I've ever done it.
Yeah.
And obviously I've seen you, Fino, Danny Roberts do it. I've seen Danny Roberts, he's like, he'll just go and run and sit in the sea. Like he makes it look amazingly normal.
Has Danny ever told you about the first time he did it though? With me?
He has told me the story, but go on.
The noises Danny Roberts made was hilarious. He was yelping. Now I'm going to say like a little girl. Now I don't mean that in a sexist way, but he was making noises that sounded not like a pro boxer, and he did not want to be in that water. And I thought he was going to go for me at one point. He was getting like pretty. He was not enjoying the experience at all. And it took him a couple of goes until he finally figured out. And obviously now you've seen like the way he does it now.
Yeah, man.
It's very, very quickly you get used to it. And then once you're used to it, it becomes so easy. And I like you see with Danny, I've seen Danny, he does the waterfalls and he does all over. It's just on the other side of discomfort, that thing that Danny's in now, and all the guys that do it, Ian will be probably, some of the stuff he's actually done with Wim will be incredible. But on the other side of comfort, if you can get through that sort of your own comfort bubble, you quickly realize actually, think about evolution. We've not had central heating and air conditioning and lovely clothes. We've not had it for that long, for a few thousand years. So before that, we were literally we were out in the elements with the animals. So falling in the water, would have been something that humans would have had to dealt with at some point.
Like bathing and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they would have had to, wouldn't they?
And I think that one of my favourite phrases is irritated oysters make pearls. And you have to get, people want resilience. And resilience is kind of a huge buzzword at the minute. But what I believe is the only way you can create resilience is with controlled adversity.
Yeah.
So the only way that you can create a resilient person is by giving them adversity for them to deal with, and then having them come out the other side of it, and then they build their resilience from dealing with that adversity. So if you shield people from adversity, if you shelter them and take that adversity away, don't be surprised if they're not resilient people, and the first time they're met with challenges that they fold really easily. If you go back to like my background in the Marines, the whole point of that 30 weeks of training, of all of that adversity, is to develop resilience in the soldiers. If you don't do all of that adversity, you don't have the resilience then to be a Royal Marine at the end of it. So
that's why they make it that tough, and
of course
they try and break you,
of course,
that you become ready.
Yes,
when you need the resilience.
Yeah, but if you've never had that at all, if you've been sheltered from that completely, how are you ever going to have that resilience levels if you've just never had the experience of having adversity to deal with?
It's very true, and I see it more and more in school. When I go in school, see it more and more these days. Like kids just don't have it, and they can't build it because they're sat behind a screen and they're playing games. And I always refer back to maybe my generation, me, Danny, people Art and Craig, Murphy. Like we were out every night and we were egging people's houses and running away. Apologies for that, but
any house in particular? Do you want to apologise to any particular streets?
No, there's a lot of houses around. I'm not going to mention any. But we were playing with bigger lads.
Yep.
And playing football, and we were getting beat every night, and it was teaching us how to lose.
Yep.
And it was teaching us how to come back and what we need to do to be a bit stronger. That was teaching us resilience, I think, and you just don't see that now. Like there's no kids trying to. No,
but then I suppose whose responsibility is that? Is it parents, schools? You could kind of go around in circles with this. I mean, my eldest daughter, she comes out in the sea with me. So she's 10 years old and she gets in the sea, and she's she started off and I think she started doing it just because she's a proper daddy's girl. I think she just wanted to make me happy. So she's seen that I was getting in the sea and thought, I'll jump in. But what's happened is that she's now really good. I've done videos of her down, beaches all around the island where we've gone and jumped in the sea together and had a swim around. And it's only a minute or two, it's only 2 or 3 minutes. But what you get is that adversity. But then that sense of achievement that comes out of adversity is incredible.
I was going to say that, yeah.
At the end of it, when she's drying herself off and we've had this experience together, and she can show her friends a video of her swimming in the sea, and then I might stick it on like social media, and people are like freaked out because there's a 10-year-old out in the sea in cold water. But actually, what comes out the back of that is this huge sense of achievement for her, because she's dealt with something that's very adverse. It's very, very out of her comfort zone,
and that will teach her a lesson for life.
For sure.
Wow, that's incredible. I might get Grayson, chuck him in the sea. See how he fancies it. He's only 9, but I'm sure he's up for it. I
have to wonder, like what would social services see with like 10-year-old with my like swimming around the sea?
I'll go down one of the beaches that you down one of them. What's that one in Laxey? You get to go down. Lovely little beach down there.
Is it Dune Beach?
Dune, maybe, yeah, Dune. I'll just go and throw him in there.
Yeah.
Hope he can swim anyway. I know that much. Sorry, we're going off topic here.
Talking about chucking our kids in cold water.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I've done, like I was saying, I've done the breath work with Kirky, and, Ian and Mandy.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I've never had an experience like it in my life. Like I lay there, and I was doing the breathing. I think we did 4 rounds.
Yeah.
And it came to the last round, and when you've done your however many breaths it is, like 10, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Mandy was hitting a chime, and I remember I was having like an out of body experience towards the end.
Yeah.
I was lost.
Yeah.
And as soon as the chime came off, it was like someone grabbed me and dragged me back down into the body on the floor. It was incredibly, I can't get my head around it to this day. I just felt like I was away from my body.
Yeah.
and then suddenly the chime would go off in the background, and I just like jump back in.
Yep. Yeah.
It was insane.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's phenomenal. And I often do like 10 rounds. I do an hour of the breath work.
Wow, really?
And that's like 50, 55 minutes, maybe an hour nearly. But
a long time.
But obviously you need to have the spare time to do it, and it's it's not something I do every day. I haven't got an hour to do every day, but if I've got a Sunday afternoon, and I'm away in the UK, I haven't got my girls, because I travel so much as well. I often, when I'm in a hotel room, get my Bose speaker out, and I just obviously grab the Wim Hof stuff off YouTube and then just lay down on the floor, put a pillow under my head, and then just do an hour of breath work. The reason why I love it so much as well, because a lot of people that I coach, the big thing is often stress, is kind of what we've been talking about. Well, actually, 15 minutes of breath work, 3 or 4 rounds of the Wim Hof method, and you're out of your sympathetic nervous system and you're into parasympathetic. So stress is just your body out of homeostasis in your sympathetic nervous system. That's all it is. So it's the perception of each stressor can be different. Going to the gym is stress because it's taking your body out of homeostasis. So if you finish at the end of a really hard day, some of my corporate clients, under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress that they deal with, and I say to them, well, this is only 15 minutes. 15 minutes at the end of the day, you lay down, put it on YouTube, lay on the floor, 15 minutes of breath work, and that's you in your parasympathetic nervous system, completely out of your stress response, and then you're properly unwound, as opposed to like reaching for a bottle of wine and then using that to unwind, which is what people often do. Actually, you don't need to do that. They just need 50 minutes of breath work, and then that's it. You're completely out of that stress response. And for some of my clients, that's revolutionary. That the ability to come out of stress.
I think it'd be huge. And I'd say to everyone listening, if you've never seen or heard of Wim Hof, please YouTube him, because he is an absolute lunatic. Yeah, the man is a lunatic. Simple as that. The Iceman. He's got the record for underwater ice swimming.
Like 100 meters or something crazy, isn't it?
His like eyes froze over or something when he was doing it.
But he climbed Everest in a pair of shorts. This is how I first got onto him, because my job in the RAF was an outdoor instructor, so I used to take people mountaineering, I'd go to the Alps and stuff like that. So I'd kind of I'd have a deep understanding of hypothermia, cold weather injuries, and working, in that sort of environment. And then I found this guy that had said he climbed Kilimanjaro in his shorts, and then I found he climbed Everest, but he didn't get quite to the summit of Everest. He got just beneath the summit, so he's still 8,000 meters up in the death zone in a pair of shorts and obviously a pair of boots with some crampons on, so he's got traction. And that I didn't believe it. Yeah. Because it went against everything that I know about cold weather injuries, and I refused to believe it. And then I started doing some research and some studying, and I was like, oh my God, this guy actually did this. Yeah. And what really blew me away was the message that I was hearing that he was saying was, anybody can do this. Anyone can do this. I'm not a Superman. Anyone can do this. And that was 3 years ago, or whenever it was I started it. I thought, well, if anyone could do it, then in the spirit of NLP, well, I just need to copy what he does. And it's true. I mean, I don't do so much of the really cold stuff now, and I've kind of got out of the competitive element. I think one of the problems that can happen with the Wim Hof method, I'm sure Ian would agree with this, is that it can get quite competitive. How long can you hold your breath for, and how long can you stay in this? But I got up to the point where I was, able to do over half an hour easily in a bath full of cold water with ice, and I'd just be doing the breath work, and it would defy all logic, because I'd be worried, you should be hypothermic. Now, what I'm not advocating at all is for people to go out and get into a bath of cold water. It took me months and months and months of practicing what Wim was doing, but actually I realised, he's right in what he's saying. He's absolutely true, and it was a revelation for me, because it gave me something that I could do wherever I am in the world, and no matter how stressed I am and no matter how much work I've got on, I could do 15 minutes of breath work and then have a really cold shower, which for some people it's like, why would I want to get a cold shower? The benefits from getting a cold shower far outweigh the discomfort for 2 or 3 minutes of cold water.
Yeah. If nobody's or if anybody's interested, by the way, we'll we'll plug Ian while we're here.
Yeah.
If anyone's interested, please give Ian Ianson a message on Facebook. He's a qualified instructor now for Wim Hof, so he does classes and stuff around cold water and around breathing. Really nice guy. Super chilled out. Like, please get in contact with him if you're interested in doing this, because it'll be life changing, as you put it.
Without doubt. And whether you're man, woman, young, old, businessman, entrepreneur, work as a chef, work in a hotel, it doesn't matter. Anyone can benefit from breath work and cold water stuff. Anybody.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give it a go soon. He keeps trying to get me there.
Do it.
I will do. Right, talk to me about you're back here. So you've told us about NLP, what it does, what the benefits are, why you do it.
Yep.
So you've set PQ Performance up over here.
Yes. Yeah. So
what do you do with PQ Performance?
I do a little bit of corporate work, not a huge amount. I've got a few corporate clients over here. I haven't really pursued corporate work very actively. It's more sort of ongoing relationships I had from my last business. I've kind of continued them, but the main focus has been about setting a business up on the Isle of Man, because my two daughters are here, so it allows me to get back and see them, which is primarily the function of it, and also because the rest of my family are over here, it seemed logical to set it up over here. And after spending probably most of my adult life in the military, or then with Pro-Noctis, which was based in London, it just seemed like a right time to bring the business back here and set a business up here that will put down some roots that will enable me to always be able to get back and see my two girls, which is really, really, as I say, absolutely vital to me. Most of the training that I do is in Barcelona, so I use a villa, and people come and stay out in Barcelona. All my courses that are out in Barcelona are fully inclusive, so it's really just get yourself to the start line, and everything else is taken care of. Then all the food, all the accommodation. We're using an amazing villa. So because most of my work was in Barcelona, it didn't make sense to set the business up in England or in the UK, because most of the stuff I do is over there anyway. So I think what will happen with PQ Performance is that business now it's a fledgling business, only 6 months old, 7 months old, and it's the performance of it already has been phenomenal. And I want to grow that business, but I've actually got two businesses that are getting built in the background that are coming on the back of that. One of which is an amazing project working with politicians in the UK. So I spend a fair amount of time now talking to Labour politicians specifically, but it's going to be cross-party this, and it's about setting up training and coaching, which is basically just a company dedicated wholly just to politicians. And then I'm setting up another business called Agoji, which is really going to be my focus in 2022. And that's doing high-end stress and burnout retreats, so using Barcelona, but instead of doing NLP, which is kind of like what people come and learn, this is more for clients that have got to the point where they're burnt out, stressed out, and a lot of my corporate clients in the UK that I did work with were Pro-Noctis. So for instance, one of the leading banks that we worked with, they would have a 6-month policy for people off with stress. So people would be off fully paid for 6 months if they had like stress or burnout or anxiety or things connected to that mental health. Well, what I'm proposing to these companies is actually we could be a safety net before there, where they come away for 7 days, they do an intense retreat where we look at every facet of their life, from diet to sleep to coaching. I've got psychologists involved with it. The coaches are all ex-special forces guys that are just brilliant at coaching. They've all studied NLP and hypnosis. They're all colleagues of mine. And then after that, we have a support coach function for these guys. So we support them for the next 4 months afterwards. And that's going to be hugely more cost effective than, say, for instance, someone being off for 6 months whose salary could be £200,000-300,000 a year salary. Well, that's a huge amount of money to be paying someone to be at home
for half a year.
So if you can prevent that at the very last hurdle, so I'm so busy at the minute, solidifying PQ Performance, getting that to a position where it's completely functional, up and running. I've got other guys that are around me that are going to come in and start delivering the training that I currently deliver. But then straight off the back of that, I'm going to be almost straight into tank thinking, which is the politician business, and then Agoji, which is the other one. And we've just bought all of the websites, and we're building all of them in the background and creating all of the training that goes with them. And it's hugely exciting.
Yeah, I've seen the website. I seen it the other day up at the office.
The new PQ Performance one.
Yeah, it's so needed because it just explains everything.
Yeah.
And that's what people want with the website. It's so clean.
Yeah.
You just go on, you click what you want to see, NLP, tell me what it's about, it tells you.
Yeah.
And there's testimonials there, which is great. I've heard from so many people that you've worked with that, how it's helped them.
Yeah.
So getting it out to the public, the only thing I worry about for you is I think the Isle of Man is massively in need of this. So what happens if it just suddenly goes boom and says, right, Phil, you need to sort everyone out, but you're not here. Obviously you've got guys over here that are going to take the role. And
I think there's different people in the business that that are developing now and becoming coaches themselves. So I've this year I launched my mentorship program where I'm actually mentoring 10 or 12 coaches. And albeit a lot of them are in the UK, but I think the point will come where we set up PQ Performance where we have, I think there'll be six or eight deliverers within that one business that are all delivering to the same standard as what I do and all doing the same sort of thing as what I do, albeit putting their own individual spin on it. And I think that will be fine. And I think if there is a need, then we'll fulfill the need from our side. So we'll find the solution, for that challenge. If there's lots of stuff on the Isle of Man and we think, well, actually we're going to need more people, I can bring people from the UK over, that are phenomenal at what they do. So I think that's not going to be the challenge. I think the next 18 months for us as a business is going to be fascinating. I think most of what we do is going to be out in Barcelona still. Obviously, there's a bit now in Dubai. There's a bit in UK, and we've got one course in Dublin next year. And I think we'll always do courses on the Isle of Man now. We'll always do the courses that we run in Barcelona and Dubai. We'll run on the Isle of Man. How frequent they will be dictated by how much need for the courses or how much desire for people to attend the course. You kind of supply and demand, isn't it? So if there's a demand for the course, then we'll absolutely supply them.
I think I'd rather go to Barcelona though.
Well, that is the thing. Yeah, Barcelona is amazing.
Yeah, I've seen the villa. I've seen it's a new villa, isn't it?
Yeah.
It looks incredible. Like it really does. And just so people are aware, you don't have to go on the course over here. You can absolutely go to Barcelona.
Yes, yeah.
You can apply for that and go on that.
Well, we're kind of having like a Manx invasion in Barcelona, if I'm honest with you. So it's great, but there seems to be more and more people coming from the Isle of Man to Barcelona for the course, which is phenomenal. Certainly not something that I ever expected. I didn't, it's kind of weird, if I'm honest with you, Hutch. When I got into all of this, it's out of the back of the military and I started doing it, I never really expected it to get to where it is now. It's been a very surprising but welcome success. And now that we're in this kind of really amazing place where lots of people from the Isle of Man are coming out to Barcelona, and because they come out and they do have a great experience on the course, they come back and they tell a lot of their friends. And the Isle of Man is kind of like that incubator environment that if it's good, then people talk about it. If it's
100%.
bad, people talk about it. But thankfully at the minute it's kind of really good feedback that we're getting, and that then creates more people that want to come. And I think that's reflected in our one day courses when we get 30, 40, 50 people coming for a one day course now.
Yeah,
which is brilliant.
No, it's huge. And why if you want to get away for a week and you want to learn about yourself and you want to learn about what this can do for you, then it could be the perfect place.
Yeah.
But yeah, be on your website, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, we're gonna have to wrap this up, mate.
Yeah.
It's before you go, give us 3 tips, main tips for everyone listening that can go away and say, right, I can work on my mental health with these 3 tips.
Okay. So the first 2 are connected. So sleep and alcohol. So you cannot underestimate the importance of sleep. And in fact, I'll just give people, rather than talk about all the science behind it, just go onto YouTube and put Professor Matthew Walker TED Talk and watch 15 minutes of probably one of the world's leading experts in sleep. And if you like what you see on YouTube, buy his book, Why We Sleep. A phenomenal book. Sleep is nature's best effort at immortality, as Matthew Walker says. And the right sleep will make you nearly invincible, as everyone kind of knows. Now, there's number 2 is connected to that, alcohol. I love a beer and I love a wine. Everyone that knows me knows I probably love it too much. But you have to understand that when you drink, you don't get the right sleep. You don't get the NREM sleep, as well as when you take sleeping tablets. They're kind of like blunt instruments. You're asleep, your eyes are closed, but you're not getting the correct sleep. So it's understanding that sleep and alcohol are connected. That's why when you get drunk, you might sleep all the way through the night, but the next day you're absolutely knackered because you haven't got that brilliant NREM and part of the REM sleep. So alcohol and sleep are the first one. And then the third one is finding activities that take you out of your stress response. Now, for some people, that's going to the gym. For others, it's reading a book. For me, it's like swimming in cold water and doing breath work. It doesn't really matter what your thing is, as long as you find your thing. That thing that evaporates all of the stresses. When you're doing it, you're not worried about, what you need to be doing, or job deadlines, or, mortgage repayments, or, relationship challenges. That one thing that when you do it, you just live it in the moment. Everyone should have that thing. And for everyone, it's different, whether it be playing chess, swimming in cold water, playing football, horse riding, going for a walk, reading a book. Everybody should have that one thing that they know is their ace that they've got in their pocket that they can go and do if all else is falling down around them.
Wow, you blow my mind a little bit. I'm super happy you came in, because I think this is going to be huge for people, and I can't thank you enough for obviously giving up your time as well for us, because I know you're a busy guy these days.
Yeah, no, it's been brilliant. Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for inviting me in.
No problem at all. Right, people. Obviously, Phil's website, PQ Performance, will be live in the next
day.
Yeah, the next day, really.
Yeah.
Okay, so by the time this comes out, you'll probably be able to go and have a look on it. But I'd recommend please do go and have a look at it, and then check out the courses. They're all going to be there, and available to book through there. I'm just going to say before we go, obviously, I'll reiterate what we said at the start. We're not a crisis team here at Reach. So if you get in contact with us and we don't get back to you straight away, then don't be alarmed. If there is an emergency that you need to get in touch with someone quickly, call the crisis team. That's what we always say. And the crisis team number 642-860. But thank you for listening, and please give us some feedback when you do hear this, because this is a good one. Take care.